Hello, ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. And today's Doctor Who review is none other than Doctor Who The Last by Big Finish Productions. So, what is Doctor Who The Last about? Well, let's start with the first question. How would it feel to be the last surviving member of your entire race? Now, this is a question that is very solid and solidified in just the whole genre of Doctor Who as a whole, and it's a question that the Doctor will soon come to understand later in his life. However, in this episode, he finally gets to confront someone who happens to be the very last. But not in the exact same way as Last of the Time Lords or any of that. No. This is a dictator slash politician who is obsessed with the idea of pretty much parading herself around in front of her people. She is obsessed with believing that she will get to see her people and she will essentially ascend beyond the life that she has lived. And her way of achieving this is destroying her own planet. There's no way of beating around the bush about it. She has destroyed her world. And the Doctor, Keris, and Charlie have come through the Interzone and crash landed in this post-apocalyptic world. A world full of nothing more than dust. They end up going into a house and the house falls down and Charlie gets crushed under the waves of the house. Keris is also pinned down but manages to just slyly get underneath it and escape in hopes of finding someone to help. Meanwhile, the Doctor goes and discovers this woman who we've just previously been talking about and begins to try and ask her and her associates for help. However, they don't believe anyone could be out on the planet as no survivors was intended. This starts to mess with the whole cycle of everyone must die for everyone to live. But as we soon later find out, this doesn't affect it completely. We'll get to that in a moment. Keris and Charlie go back to the base that the Doctor is in underground. They go to this bunker and discover that the Lady President has decided to build herself a rocket to escape the planet so that she can go off to other worlds and destroy them in the same manner and continue her cycle of stupidity. However, what she doesn't realise is that the two ministers that she will later go on to murder have pretty much been at nose length of knowing that the planet will never let her leave. This lady president or politician, as she is in the story, essentially then goes on to kill Charlotte Pollard. This is after Charlotte finds herself paralysed and begins to have a bit of a mental breakdown. Charlie is so lost, so broken from the idea that she could be paralysed for life that she would prefer to die. This, of course, upsets Keris greatly, and he refuses to murder her. Except for him, he doesn't realise that the politician was listening in the background, so she kills Charlotte. The Doctor and Keris then catch up to her and try and convince her to tell the truth. However, the Doctor, trying to hold off, decides to go off in the rocket with the politician lady, along with Keris, just so that they can get off of the dying world. However, on the way, the Doctor and Keris soon discover that two of her assistants have been murdered in cold blood. The Doctor ignores this and takes them all up into space. Keris gets defensive over the death of Charlotte and gets shot in the chest by our antagonist. The Doctor fights back against her and begins to say that she doesn't understand quite what the last means, and he begins to suspect that it all has something to do with the planet. The rocket then comes crashing back down to Earth, and our politician is definitely the last of her kind, as everyone else has been murdered. The Doctor then complains to one of the people he previously talked to, who is now talking to him in spirit form, and points out that she is definitely the last of the species. However, after she dies from the crushing weight of the dying planet, it turns out that the Doctor has kind of interfered in the cycle, and now the only way for the cycle to finally end is the Doctor must commit suicide. A very dark theme for this story, but a very strong one nonetheless. After the Doctor manages to achieve suicide in the form of blowing himself up with the rest of what remains of the planet, everything goes back to normal, back to the parade that the politician was going on about, back to when Charlie and Keris first arrived in the interzone to this planet, and back to when everyone on the planet is cheering for a life of peace. The Doctor being the only one to remember the events that have played out with the destroyed planet and the wreckage and the apocalyptic scenario, decides to take Keris and Charlie away back into the interzone to escape the tragedy that might repeat itself one day. He also is so appalled by the attitude of the politician as she calls Charlotte a cripple, and on top of that, believes that no one else in the world matters more than herself. The Doctor absolutely loathes and hates her in this story and begins to resent ever coming to that planet, wishing nothing but peace for the people there, and eternal peace, in hopes that maybe one day the cycle will end and the planet will not have to keep saving itself from these cruel and harsh and destructive beings. So, Doctor Who, The Last, by Big Finish Productions. What did I think of this Big Finish audio? Honestly, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's dark, it's dreary. I like the idea that Keris sees ghosts in this, and no one believes him. This is why I love Keris's character so much, because Keris isn't just from another dimension. It's this idea that he's a very strong and a very charismatic character. He's outgoing, but at times he feels like he's misunderstood. And I feel like that's what makes him so great, is this idea that Keris feels like he can see things and see things from angles that people can't see. And because of this, he worries that maybe it's either his spiritual connection as a monk, or maybe it's just a coincidence. But nonetheless, he fights with every character in this audio to try and get them to believe that the dead souls of the people who were wiped out in the nuclear destruction, they still linger on the planet, and Keris can see them. The Doctor doesn't quite believe it because he always believes in a rational explanation, but the Doctor does believe that maybe, just maybe, Keris could see these souls. Keris also tries to convince Charlotte, but Charlotte's not having any of it, and I love the relationship between Charlotte and Keris as the story goes along. It's very bitter, it's very childish, and most of the time, the stuff I love the most is how they both feel like siblings. They feel like siblings constantly arguing with one another, and I feel like that's what makes them so great. And for that reason, I give The Last a solid 9 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next Doctor Who review. Until then, goodbye, stay beautiful, and have an incredible night.